Hi, everybody. Welcome to the third official episode of Takes. We are now 1 week into the NFL season, 1 week in one game, I suppose. And a lot of things happen in week one. A lot of odd things always happen in week one. And it's hard to know exactly what to make of what you see in week one, whether or not you should stick to your preseason convictions, whether or not week one is what we actually see, and then really diving into why we saw the things we saw into week one, I think can be really, really challenging. Not to mention there's some college football going on. I don't think me and Alex are going to talk a lot of the college football, but Alex, what do you think of the Colorado game last night before we get into the NFL stuff?
Colorado State should have gone for it on two in the first overtime, and Shannon Sharp had a tweet that summed up everything. He's like, they need to go for two. I would. And they didn't, and they lost because they couldn't make the 2 point work.
As
So
someone that's rooting for Colorado and I like Deion Sanders, I'm glad that they didn't. I did not get to stay up and watch that game. However, I'm glad Colorado squeaked out the W. It sounded like the trash talk from Colorado State didn't quite have the effect that a lot of people predicted, where that was a popular pick, was Colorado to blow out Colorado State, that they kept it close. We'll have to see how they look moving forward, but 3-0 is 3-0. You know, they had a couple really impressive wins the first couple weeks. So, but
I have one more thing.
yep.
My father-in-law lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and he started watching the podcast. So I wanted to give him a shout out. South Carolina is still bad at football. That's it.
Right. You know what I was thinking about South Carolina, just while we're on the college football for a sec? What really sucked as an OU fan about Caleb Williams leaving is, would Spencer Rattler be the starter at OU today if Caleb Williams had never beat him out? Because I'm not sure he wouldn't be. Where I like Dylan Gabriel, I think he's a fine player, but Spencer Rattler may play in the Canadian League or like even be a backup in the NFL, if not a probably not a starter, but he may be a mid-level backup in the NFL at some point in his career. And I'm pretty sure he would be the starter at OU. So it's like, not only did we lose Caleb Williams, but in a way we also lost Spencer Rattler. But I try to leave the past in the past. It's nothing we can do now. OU's winning some games and looking better this year. So anyway, Alex, what are we starting with today?
Today we are going to talk about, first and foremost, the overreactions that will probably prove to be false from week one games, and the overreactions that, might have some truth to them moving forward. So, Tate, why don't you take us off?
Okay, my biggest overreaction of week one, which may sound funny coming from me because this is a team I picked to finish last in their division. But the team that everyone is overreacting to this week, in my opinion, is the New York Giants. The New York Giants got beat on national television, standalone game on Sunday night to the Cowboys, who's a huge brand, huge viewership always on the Cowboys games, where it is not anything new that people tend to overreact to a standalone Cowboy football game. And the way that game played out, I don't think the Giants are as bad as they looked. And I'm not a Daniel Jones fan. There's a lot of problems and a lot of red flags with the Giants. I don't think they have a particularly good group of receivers. I think Darren Waller, their best weapon, is past his prime. But I also think the way that game went is exactly what you can't have if you are the New York Giants. Where what is Daniel Jones good at? You can answer that question.
Oh God, nothing. Throwing interceptions, fumbling, or I guess check downs and
Running the ball, maybe, right? He's a pretty good runner of the football. When it's like, if you were gonna actually give an answer, he'd probably say, yeah, he's a pretty good at design quarterback runs and managing the game more than he is making plays with his arm, right? He has he makes some good throws, but that's not where you would put his strength as a quarterback. So the way to win with a guy like that, and what we've seen from the Ravens the entirety of Lamar's career, is if you get up on somebody or if the game's close, you can play to Daniel Jones's strength. And not to mention their best player on the team is Saquon Barkley, the running back. And when the Cowboys score a defensive touchdown and return a punt. It's like they get up to this lead where then all of a sudden it's raining and Daniel Jones has to play, try to play Patrick Mahomes kind of quarterback style or Patrick Mahomes football where you're playing from behind, you're throwing the ball around the yard, you're trying to throw these weapons that, if Patrick Mahomes had Darren Waller and not a lot else, it'd probably be fine, but that is not who Daniel Jones is. And I think the way that game played out, it created just this snowball effect where the Giants got worse and worse and worse into a hole, which totally plays against their strengths, which is the running game, which is Saquon Barkley, which is getting after the quarterback. And so that was my biggest overreaction is I don't think the Giants are going to be great. But I do have them about a 7 or 8 win team. And the way it looked Sunday night, you would think they have a shot at losing to the Cardinals in week 2, which I think the Giants come back. I think they win. I'm not going to say make a statement game because I don't know that you could make a statement game after losing 40-0, but I think they win pretty easily. I think they look a lot more like themselves. I think Dayball comes out with a good game plan. I think they get Daniel Jones running the ball. I think they get Saquon Barkley much more involved. I think Darren Waller looks better. If there was a silver lining from week 1, which would be really hard to find, is Darren Waller had some targets and catches and looks like he can be the focal point of their passing game, which should be limited. But with a weapon like Darren Waller, you're hoping that it is improved over what it has been last year, where, they had 15 touchdown passes last year. And that's a low number in 2023 for the NFL. So that was my overreaction. I think the Giants, albeit not going to be a great football team, are not as bad as it looked. And I think the fact that the Cowboys were on the other side and it was a standalone national TV game, people love to overreact to any Cowboy game. So that's my overreaction. The Giants.
I would agree that they're going to be better than being shut out.
Yeah, they're going to score points throughout the course of the season.
They're going to get some points. The thing that I would push back is maybe they are bad though. There's people are hoping, 7 to 9 wins, but I think just given that who they are and how to eliminate their strength, a lot of NFL teams have figured out Daniel Jones. And that is wait till he makes a mistake, get points off of it, which is exactly what the Cowboys did. Right. And then just keep drilling him because he's going to keep making mistakes the more you let him try to come back from a deficit.
Well, to that point, what we saw last year was the game script that leads to their success. They were able to play out, which is why they made the playoffs. And it's one of the reasons we both weren't very high on them, and I had them last in the division. And like I said, it's funny that I brought up the Giants because I don't think the Giants are going to be particularly good either this year. However, I think you're absolutely correct where if the game goes differently a few times, like what we saw where they get behind on teams, they are not a come from behind kind of football team. They're a keep it close, keep it ugly, get out to a 3-point lead where you can play to your strength. And if they have multiple games or teams get a turnover early, like you said, which Daniel Jones and Dayball have done a better job eliminating those. But if that reverts back to his old way where there's some turnovers, they could be in real trouble and really, really have a poor record and be thinking, are they going to trade a draft pick or are they going to try to draft Drake May or one of these college quarterbacks that there's 5 first rounders maybe this year. So I do agree.
Yeah. And I think that this game today versus the Cardinals is going to kind of be indicative of that because the Cardinals played the Commanders close. Obviously everybody in the world knows that the Cards are full tank mode right at this point. They are going after Caleb Williams. But if they accidentally sneak out a win versus the Giants, that flips to the Giants going into tank very quickly. Even though
the Giants, the season could end for the Giants today. Absolutely, 100.
And that's pretty terrifying. And going in thinking that you had a playoff team last year that might be trying by week 3 to go, 1-16
Right.
is a bad spot to be, and it makes you question what their front office is doing, because they know better than anybody who Daniel Jones is. They
Right.
still give him the contract, which means they kind of sort of believe him at some point. But we know that this
I
league is all about winning. So if you're not winning,
I think the ownership likes Daniel Jones. I don't know that Brian Daboll loves Daniel Jones. I don't know if it was up to Daboll. We'll kind of see. And this is obviously speculation on my part. I have no way to know this, but I don't know that Brian Daboll would have given him that contract if it was just up to him. Where versus Saquon Barkley got essentially franchise tagged and Daniel Jones got the big contract. I think if it was up to Daboll, he would have made Daniel Jones play it out another year. So we'll have to see. We'll just have to see. Yeah, but you can't lose by 40 on Sunday night opening week and then lose to the Cardinals in week 2 and have a successful season. It's just not going to happen. Just flatly,
yeah,
not going to happen. So, who was your overreaction? What do you think people are overreacting to week 1?
I'm gonna have to go with the the Falcons. Sorry,
No problem.
Atlanta Falcons. Now, winning 14 points on
2 scores in an NFL game.
I mean, yeah, it's a W for them, but their quarterback situation, and you can kind of just look in at Ritter. It's not going to work out for him. Bijan's a monster, right? And he's got
Bijan looks awesome.
He's getting me so many fantasy points this year. I'm
right.
but he's that. I also want to preface this. I got Bijan because last year in Dynasty I was real bad. So anything that I say, take with a giant grain of salt.
Right.
I'm going to stand by him because I have that white man confidence. Where I don't think that Atlanta can really push past some of the better NFC teams. I think that they're going to beat up on really bad teams, and anybody who can really stop the run is going to expose Atlanta. So I think that I don't think they're nearly as good as people are saying, like national pundits. I think that they're going to have to rely on all of their weapons, but without a quality distributor, it's going to get bad. And I think they're going to their defense is probably going to get exposed a little bit, because Bryce Young, he was bad first game, but it's a rookie first game, and he didn't look all that bad against the Falcons. So I think we are going to see a little bit more of the shakeup of the NFC South. I don't know. Like last week, I said I'm taking the Bucks all the way, and a lot of people would call me insane, which is fair. But
week 1,
it's week 1. They got out the win, and I think they're going to make a little bit more of a push within their division. And I think that's going to really hurt the Falcons, who are it's just not going to work with Desmond Ritter. But, they have this entire team set up very similar to the 49ers, minus the strong defense, that whoever they plug in next year, if they decide to draft somebody, if they finish poorly enough and draft somebody high, which there are a wealth of upcoming quarterbacks from college that could really play well, they could be looking pretty solid going forward. But this year is it's not in the cards for the Falcons.
Right. A couple things to your point. Desmond Ritter in week 1 in that win threw for 115 yards. Most of that was Bijan Robinson catching screens and then making stuff happen after the catch. Almost all of it. He didn't really have any down the field passes that were successful. He completed 80% of his throws, but if you look at the play calling, they do not trust him to air the ball out at all. And also to your point, if you look at who's in their division with the Bucks and the Saints, that is two of the best defenses in the league at stopping the run. And this is a team that a lot of people were high on before the season with Kyle Pitts, with Bijan Robinson, with Drake London. Me and you were both skeptical because you have to have a quarterback who can get them the ball. And I totally agree. I don't really think they have a distributor who can utilize their weapons that they're going to need to A, win the division, B, make a playoff push. And just one more time, if you also look at who's in the division, the Bucks got to win week one. They went in. I wasn't very high on the Vikings, but a lot of people thought they would repeat as division winner or at least be a wild card team. You go in, you beat them week one, and then the Saints eked out a win week one. So, I think they could really, really struggle in the division, and you are just going to have to be able to throw the ball some in 2023. And I don't think the Falcons think they can throw the ball. Where, just not to get into the fantasy side of it too much, they're by far the best fantasy performances they had were both of their running backs, meaning they're going to be leaning heavily on that running game. They play some teams in the division that I don't think that will work as well on, and we'll have to see. And, Bryce Young had some turnovers, and I think if he gets that fixed, that game, even week one, that matchup looks a lot different, where by the time they play Carolina again, Carolina may be quite a bit better. So I totally agree. I think the Falcons, while they should be somewhat encouraged and Bijan looks awesome, I don't see them winning that division. I don't see them. And if they do, I see them getting annihilated in the first round of the playoffs by whoever they play, whether it be, the Cowboys being the 5 seed, the top wildcard team, or the Eagles, whoever it will be, probably a team from the NFC East, but yeah, totally agree. Who was your real reaction? So who do you think people are responding correctly to after week one?
See, that's a little bit tougher because I've seen a lot of people kind of, and I talked to Tate about this for everybody out there in the world. I talked to Tate about this a little bit. We've seen a lot of teams who lose bad not really take the blame a lot for losing bad. Bengals, the Giants, even some ugly losses, and they're kind of dismissed. But there's huge overreactions to teams that finish really, really well in their games. Browns, like that game, people are saying, the Browns are it. They're technically number one in their
just to let people behind the curtain. Me and Alex obviously didn't have the Browns in our overreaction, but that was both a team that it was a team we were both considering for that segment, where it's like, yeah, I totally agree that the Browns are not as good as they look. They just have the Bengals number, but yeah,
yeah. So I think for me, and I'm going to switch it up just a little bit, I think that the overreaction that might have something real to it at this point, and Tate's gonna love this. I think the Dolphins. I think the overreaction to the Dolphins win and how they're calling them the looks like going all the way. I am going to stand by what I said, which is if Tua gets hurt, this season's completely different.
All bets are off if Tua gets hurt. Yes,
all bets are off if Tua gets hurt. But if Tua stays healthy, my God, they just look great. They're fast. Tyreek Hill just gets open.
Fastest player in the history of the NFL, probably. Tyreek Hill.
All the time. He's just somewhere down there, and Tua's gonna get the ball to him. He makes all the throws. He's smart. He's developed the vision of the field. He's working through progressions very quickly. Their defense gave up a lot of points to the Chargers, but the Chargers are also a very good team. And I can't imagine what it will take to stop the Dolphins, really. Like it would take one of these NFC like defense heavy teams to actually stop them. That can, with people who like corners that are world class, that you still have to double team, and you're still going to give up a bunch of yards to Tyreek. You're gonna have to get edge rushers coming after him, but their line looks really, really solid, especially like they've been hammering the offensive line play from the Dolphins to protect Tua from taking those big hits. And I think that that's just also going to bleed over to where he can actually take more shots downfield. And if he works on his timing just a little tiny bit more, it's gotten way better. There were some weird drops, some weird throws, just a little bit more finesse on that. And I think that we're absolutely correct to overreact and say the Dolphins are probably making the Super Bowl.
I totally agree, and you ended it on just I think the Chiefs are a good pick every year to win the Super Bowl while they have Mahomes and Andy Reid, but they aren't going to win it every single year either. And we talked about this earlier in the week, just so people know. The Dolphins are a team that I could actually see winning the Super Bowl, and of course, Tua's health is, hugely important to that success. But I also think that's why they brought in a guy like Mike White as the backup, where if Tua had to miss 4 games, but was going to be perfectly healthy the rest of the season, could they go 2-2 with Mike White and those weapons? Probably. They probably could. And they'd change the play design a little bit, but their offense, and I love Mike McDaniel as a head coach. He's one of my favorite young coaches in the league. If you're the Chargers right now, you're thinking, damn, man, we should have went and got Mike McDaniels and not Brandon Staley. If you had Herbert and Mike McDaniel, I think it would be something, because I think Herbert's a little more naturally gifted than Tua. But what they do in that offense as far as scheme is they totally play to Tua's strength with his accuracy, his ability to make quick decisions. They use Tyreek Hill in a really, obviously, an effective way. He had 200 receiving yards in week 2, and then in week 1, and then you have Jalen Waddle on the other side. So Tyreek Hill may be the fastest player in the history of the league on one side. Jalen Waddle may be the 3rd fastest guy in the NFL today, or top 5 probably. On the other side, Raheem Mostert hasn't been able to stay healthy for most of his career, but he's still one of the fastest guys in the league, where it is just a lot. And watching it, we knew the Chargers were going to be able to score points, but I thought that game was a coaching mismatch, which is what played out down the stretch of that game. So I think the Dolphins, I think that is a great answer, because I think the Dolphins are going to be awesome. And as long as Tua can stay healthy, which the offensive line is improved, should help Tua stay healthy. And then the Mike McDaniel scheme also helps Tua stay healthy, because they do a great job not putting him in jeopardy throughout the course of the game. They take their deep shots really wisely. They set them up. They kind of get the defense worn out with their quick passing game and their running game. And then before they take the deep shots, where they do a good job to negate any sort of pass rush, which if anyone should be able to rush the passer, it's the Chargers. And they did I thought, a great job of, like I said, limiting that pass rush. I think the Dolphins, like I said, I think that's a great answer. I think the Dolphins are really, really going to be awesome. And they're a team to look out for if they're healthy. I think they're going to win that division. And I think they have a legit shot at making the Super Bowl this year. We'll have to see what the Chiefs look like. The Jaguars, I think, are going to be pretty good, but I don't think the Jaguars are going to be as good as the Dolphins. The only advantage the Jaguars have is they play in the easier division, probably going to win more division games. So, yeah, really, really good answer.
All right, Tate, who is your overreaction that has some truth to it?
To me, the real reaction, if you will, it's the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion. And when you come out and when you have Zach Wilson on the other side of the football, and you're Josh Allen, and the defense is playing good, and you have what looks like a better running game than they had in years past. James Cook actually looks really good. He looks like a 3-down back who can run it and catch it out of the backfield. The defense wasn't allowing any points. Zach Wilson was probably as likely to throw a pick six as he was a touchdown in that game. You absolutely cannot turn the ball over 4 times. And one of them was almost like a punt on 3rd and 16, and the other 3 were just horrible turnovers for the time. Especially, the fumble at the end of the game, I thought was the difference in the game. But Josh Allen seems to be regressing more and more without Dayball, and I think he tries to put on his Superman cape too much, and he's going to have to learn to take the checkdowns. And Mahomes learned this lesson a couple of years ago, where you can't make the big play every time, and sometimes you have to take a layup. You can't pull up from a 30-foot 3-point shot every single play. You got to be able to get to the rim and get to the basket, if you will. And I think it's really, really alarming that the way that game was going and how well the defense was playing, Josh Allen doesn't recognize that. Alex, I was talking to my dad about this week. I think the Bills could have taken a knee every play in the second half and won that game. And Josh Allen basically gave the game to him with the turnovers. If they had chewed the clock, or maybe not taken a knee, but ran the ball every time and just chewed the clock and stayed in bounds, I'm not sure they wouldn't have won that game. Because I don't think the Jets were moving the ball, man. And I think, like I said, I just think it's really, really alarming that he is not a young player anymore in the league. And a couple of years ago, when he was turning it over at a high level, but you still saw the upside, it's like, okay, he'll work out the turnovers, he'll cut out the mistakes, and we see the brilliant upside. So the potential seemed limitless a couple of years ago, and now he's a little older. He still hasn't learned to cut out those mistakes. He turns it over at a higher rate than anybody in the National Football League. And that's a real problem. And they are going to have some internal conflict, I believe, if that keeps up. Stephon Diggs, I thought, was a great teammate in week 1. I want to give him some credit. We saw the explosion, the confrontation at the end of the last season. I thought Stephon Diggs did a great job trying to lift Josh Allen up. But if they keep losing games like they lost 16-23, where Josh Allen has multiple turnovers, I have to think that not just Stephon Diggs, but especially Stephon Diggs will start becoming frustrated. I think as an organization, you start becoming frustrated when a quarterback is supposed to be a star. And if we're being honest, the reason people have been so high on the Bills is because they thought the quarterback was special. And when it looks like that's not the case, I think the organization will start becoming frustrated. And I think the Bills have a real chance this season for an implosion and really, really coming off the rails. And, I think they have a chance to miss the playoffs. And I thought week 1 without Aaron Rodgers was a huge loss for him, where they have the Raiders this week. I think they're 8-point favorites. Let's just say they lost to the Raiders. What would happen to the Bills? No, I'm obviously not picking that. I think the Bills may beat them by 20 points today, because they tend to, once they get going, we know they have the upside. We know Josh Allen has the upside as high as anybody in the league at his position. But if they lost to the Raiders, I wouldn't want to be on that locker room. I think Josh Allen gets even more in his own head. And I think there's real problems. I think they're going to win this week, but I think moving forward, there's real red flags with the Buffalo Bills. I think there's real red flags with Josh Allen. I think you may look back in 3 to 5 years and think, man, we should have promoted Dayball to head coach and let McDermott, even though he had success, let him find another job as a head coach probably somewhere, or even a defense coordinator, because I love what McDermott did to get them back on the map, but I don't think he's the coach that gets them over the top. So, real reaction, Buffalo Bills. I think there's trouble in paradise. They've been really, really good. 13 wins each of the last 2 seasons. I don't think that continues this year. I think Josh Allen continues to regress, and I think we see the Buffalo Bills potentially implode.
Yeah, so I will pick because it goes back to our preseason predictions, right? And we were talking about what the AFC East is going to look like. and both of us were kind of on the, well, one, either Tua's going to get hurt or Josh Allen's going to continue to regress, and there's
Right.
going to be an implosion from one of those teams. I think I think we're getting the warning signs that Josh Allen, it might be the latter of the two. Josh Allen might be imploding a little bit, and that's pretty terrifying if you're Buffalo, because you need that guy to do all of the great things that he can do while, like you said, limiting, just don't turn the ball over. Like, it doesn't have to be on your shoulders every win, right? And there's a lot of people comparing Josh Allen, Brett Favre-esque, right? He's gonna throw picks and he's gonna throw touchdowns, and that's just the way he plays. And those people are stupid, because it's it's not, this is a different generation. This is a different game of football, right? Teams aren't just gonna say, "Oh, we picked him off. Yay. He looks bad now." They're going to turn those into points. They're going to take that short field and get you. And that's exactly what the Jets did. And that's not good. You can't lose Aaron Rodgers in the first four plays of the very first drive and then lose to Zach Wilson, who was the worst back. You can't do it. And now you're
the worst starting quarterback in the league last year. You can't come out and lose week 1 to Zach Wilson. Yeah, I totally agree. And
well, it's just, what does that say even about moving forward on the teams you're supposed to beat? Like, you couldn't beat the first one that was like a as gimme could get, and it's back to playing to strengths, like we were talking about with the Giants. Yeah, play to the strengths of Josh Allen, which is he's gonna run, he's gonna be pretty accurate, he's got a cannon for an arm, but whenever you're playing to those strengths and you get up, he's not good. And the head coach, the offensive coordinating, is not good with playing to the strengths of, hey, maybe we do some check downs, we keep this clock running. And it's something that scares me, not only for Buffalo, but for Josh Allen himself, because he's not being coached to do the right thing. Or it scares me for the Buffalo management and their coaching staff, because Josh Allen might be being coached to do the smart thing and he's just not listening.
right.
So you gotta kind of take a hard look in the mirror and say, maybe Josh Allen isn't what we thought he was, and we have to start, hopefully, cap space permitting, start building around him that can really, like, give him a million weapons all the time, and hope that, just like, not spend any money on defense, essentially, and hope that he gets everything he needs and fixes it himself. But I don't see that happening, and so I think we're in a bad spot for them.
Oh yeah, just a few things to unpack there that I want to respond to. First of all, the Brett Favre comparisons I don't like, and you're exactly right that it's a different game where Brett Favre can throw some picks and get away with it because teams didn't score as many points. Where when he has the huge upside 25 years ago, it's a lot different, because if you look at the AFC, who are the other quarterbacks in the AFC? Mahomes, just as much upside as Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson, who we're not even as high on, just as much upside nearly as Josh Allen. Joe Burrow, better than Josh Allen. Trevor Lawrence, just as much upside as Josh Allen, where you cannot get away with that in the AFC. I didn't even mention Tua, who we both were giving praise all the first segment. You know what I mean? So
in division, Tua,
you cannot turn the ball over like that. And Josh Allen, you have to change your mindset when you get a lead. And if you watch, Joe Burrow is great about that. Patrick Mahomes is great about that, where once you build that lead, it has to be more about protecting the ball than making plays. And Josh Allen doesn't seem to quite understand that when they build those leads up where it's just okay, now I have to play mistake-free football. That's just not in his DNA. And did you see did you see almost the most alarming play if I'm the Bills fan was Josh Allen had a play on third down where he tried to hurdle about four guys and he was about 8 yards short of the first down. It's like the decision making is just not there. So yeah, I think the Bills have, like I said, real red flags moving forward. And I like Josh Allen. He's probably a heck of a nice guy, and I really hope that he gets it worked out. But I am alarmed today if I'm a Bills fan. And I think there's some truth to that. I'm glad they have the Raiders this week to hopefully clean things up. But Josh Allen, you're going to have to bring in either an offensive guy or what the other thing you said about the defense and the not spending any money. That's one of the reasons I didn't like the Von Miller contract for them very much. Now they thought incorrectly, obviously, that okay, we bring in Von Miller, we're going to have a defense that's elite. We're already going to have elite playmaker, elite quarterback play. We have elite receiver. They brought in Von Miller in hopes to win the Super Bowl. You don't make a deal like that. You don't sign an older player to a 6-year extension the way they did unless you're trying to win the Super Bowl. But I didn't love it. I thought they kind of pushed too many of their chips to the middle of the table and didn't really think about the future because they are in a tough spot as far as adding weapons. They went and drafted Kincaid. They drafted James Cook last year. But what happens when those guys need to get paid? And Dawson Knox needs to get paid. And they still don't really have a receiver too that anybody likes very much. How are you going to bring that guy in? So I think he made some really good points. And I think the Bills are I'm not going to write them off. I think they're too talented. And with the Aaron Rodgers injury, I obviously don't think they're going to be third in the division anymore. I think the Jets fall to third or fourth in the division, unfortunately, unless they go get somebody, that quarterback who can function better than Zach Wilson. But, I think the Bills probably bump up to second in the division, may make the playoffs as a wild card now, but may not also. And we'll just have to see how they look moving forward and if they can handle the adversity that inevitably comes throughout the course of an NFL season.
Yeah. All right, Tate. Well, who is your need to win this game pick of this week?
Okay. I am going to give you two teams that absolutely have to win this week for different reasons. Number one is the Chargers. The Chargers play at Tennessee this week. The Titans do not look very good. Derrick Henry is one of the best running backs in the NFL history. He's one of the best players I've ever seen play in this league, but he is declining and past his prime. They did not look good in week one. The Chargers looked pretty good in week one. I thought Kellen Moore's offense, they obviously scored some points. I still don't think they're pushing the ball down the field enough. Some of that at some point has to be on Justin Herbert, right? Because you brought in a new coordinator who loves throwing the ball down the field. Dak Prescott led the league in passing a couple times with Kellen Moore. So if we don't see him start airing it out, some of that has to start falling to him, but I still would like to see them push the ball down the field more. However, the Chargers found a way to charger it up at the end and lose a game that they were right in contention for the whole time. And that was one of the main reasons I like the Dolphins in week one, even though they're on the road in a tough environment, because I thought the coaching mismatch would come to fruition. And I thought that's how things would play out. And I think that's exactly what we saw, where the Dolphins down the stretch were a better coach team. Thought they were better prepared. I thought they had a better game plan. And I thought they handled the situation better. I think the Chargers tend to lose those close games, which is why I worry about them slightly on the road in Tennessee, because Tennessee has kind of team that can take the wind out of your sails. If Tannehill can avoid the costly mistakes, if they can lean on Derrick Henry, I think Vrabel's teams are always well coached. I think they'll be pretty good on defense, Tennessee. So the Chargers, I think it's a sneaky must-win game where if you fall to 0-2 in the AFC, I think you're really in a bad spot, especially with that division. You know you're going to lose twice to the Chiefs this year, the Chargers. It's just something you know. You know, it's like no one. They play them close every time. They can't seem to beat them. You know, it's like no one has the Chiefs number in that division, and I think they're in some real trouble if they don't win today. Now, the other must-win game that I'm going to give you, which is going to surprise people, is the Dallas Cowboys. And here's why. The Dallas Cowboys, everybody loves them when they look good. Everybody loves the 40 to nothing victory. The defense looks like it might be the best in the league. Dak Prescott left some to be desired, but he didn't need to do a whole lot. You won 40-0. What do you want the guy to do? You know, no big deal. The running game looks great. I think most of the team looks as advertised and looks like a real contender. If you lose to the Jets at home to Zach Wilson, it is the same old Cowboys, where you lose a game that you shouldn't. You're all of a sudden at a deficit to the Eagles in the division. You're probably not going to get the 1 seed because I don't trust them to not lose any more games like that the rest of the year. Where all of a sudden we're looking from, we could flip from feeling really, really spectacularly great about the Dallas Cowboys after week 1 to, man, this is the same old team. You know, it's the same old Cowboys. We're going to be pretty good. We're going to be mediocre, but we're going to lose some games that we shouldn't. Means we're going to have a tough road in the playoffs. You know, we're going to have a really hard road to the Super Bowl, and we're probably going to get beat by the 49ers in the second round like we do every single year. So those were my 2 teams that I really had on my radar. That Cowboys, you can't lose this game. You can't lose to Zach Wilson. You can't pull the Buffalo Bills and lose to Zach Wilson. Dak, you got to protect the ball. The defense going to get after him. And then the Chargers, obviously, like I said, if you fall to 0-2, you are in trouble in the AFC when you are a team that has a lot of promise and a lot of people had high expectations for.
Yeah. So I've got 2 as well. I like yours. I don't think the Cowboys are going to lose. They're not going to lose to the
I don't
Jets.
think they're going to lose either. I don't think they're going to lose to the Jets either. But I'd be lying if I'd be lying if it wasn't somewhat of a trap game in my mind. You know what I mean?
I do think that they are. You're exactly right. If they lose to the Jets,
if they lose, it's bad.
Which
right?
technically, I mean, we live for this game, and we say any given Sunday, right? It could anything happen in the NFL. These are still professionals.
Right.
I don't think that they will, but yeah, you're exactly right that the Dallas Cowboys are just screwed. I'm going to stick with the first of my 2, AFC West, because I think you're right. What you said just at the end about the Chargers, you cannot go 0-2. The Broncos cannot go.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good answer.
And I think that if they like the Commanders sneakily okay, like they could get a win.
Not a bad team, man. They got a good defense. Sam Howell ran a touchdown and threw one last week. You know, it's like he's all right. He looks like he's
it would be funny.
Good backup.
It'd be fun. It's a great backup. It'd be funny if the Commanders just like play Sam Howell like how Russell Wilson wants to play. You know, just let him run, let him extend plays, let him throw whatever he needs to. And Russell Wilson is Mr. Quite Limited at this point to steal something from Nick Wright. I think that the Broncos just can't afford to lose this, and I think they might. I think it looks not great on paper, and I think
kind of agree with you. I think they might lose this week. I don't hate the Commanders if I had to bet that game.
Because then they're down 0-2. They got to play Chargers, who whatever you're saying about the coaching at the Chargers, like they still got Justin Herbert, who's still gonna make huge plays against you. Right. And then they have to play the Chiefs, and that's 4 more of their games. And if they lose to the Commanders, you think they're not getting swept by both of those teams. So all of a sudden you're taking that 0-2 and you're looking at, well, maybe.
Already 6 losses. Where are you going to find the wins?
Yeah.
Where you got to find the wins somewhere.
So
That's a great answer. And I thought it was really an alarming way to lose that week 1 matchup because the offense still didn't score any points. And we thought it was Nat Hackett last year, and Sean Payton comes in, is supposed to kind of be the fix all on offense and the quarterback guru and all this stuff, and they still didn't score any points. So that's really alarming to me if I'm a Bronco fan.
And the reason I look at this and say that this is a must-win week 2 is because it's a must-win week 2 for the next 4 seasons for the Broncos.
Right. Yeah.
Because
I ask you a question about this game?
Yeah.
If the Broncos lose this game, how long do you think Russell Wilson has as the starter for an NFL team if they lose this game? How much longer do you think he starts in the NFL?
How long is he under contract?
5 more years after this year.
Yeah. Okay. So it's that much, and we're just gonna see the Broncos be the worst team in the AFC.
You don't think they go to Simeon at all? You don't think they try?
You don't pay that person that you rather you just say, hey, we because we're paying your contract, we can't give you an offensive line, and hope that it kind of takes care of itself. You know what I mean? So like, it's horrible. It's horrible that he's in that situation. It's the contract that they gave him was the worst contract
Looks
probably
bad.
ever.
Yeah.
And he's going to be asked to beat Patrick Mahomes twice to 3 times a year.
We're just not going to beat Patrick Mahomes.
And he's not going to do it. You know? So like, what are you're God, it's just bad. And so I think that the rest of for the rest of the decade, the Broncos need to win this game.
Right. It could get real ugly real quick. And I actually think if the Broncos lose this game, and say they get to 1-5 or something like that, I'm not sure we don't see a quarterback change midway through the year. If they're as bad as it looked. Now they could win today, and they could win a couple, they could get to 3-2, 4-1, 4-2, and okay, Sean Payton got them playing well, But if it keeps going bad, I don't think Sean Payton's going to be patient with Russell Wilson. I don't think Russell Wilson is Sean Payton's kind of guy. Like, I don't feel like they get along very well. I don't think he loves his approach to things. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons they brought in that backup is I really feel like they have a contingency plan. And it would be hard to move that contract. It'd be a lot of dead money if you just cut him. But it would be 1 year of really, it would be you kind of take medicine. I don't know. It'd be interesting. For entertainment value and drama purposes, I would kind of love it if they got beat today because it just would be, I think it'd be chaos in Denver if they got beat by the Commanders, go to 0-2 already.
It could happen, and that's the dangerous part. So that would be my one of my games. The other game, the Bengals, I'm not sounding the alarms on Joe Burrow with his massive contract now because we know he's good. We know he is efficient. He's got the right mindset, makes the throws, and he can extend plays a little bit, so he's going to be fine. But you can't go 0-2 within division first 2 weeks. Like you can't lose that badly to the Browns and then come out and lose to the Ravens. And I think that the Ravens could afford the loss a little bit more,
right,
than the Bengals, which
I agree. And here's what I'll say about the Bengals. If they go 0-2, I don't think they'd miss the playoffs still. I still think they're a playoff team. I think we've seen their ability to rip off several wins, even against good teams in a row. So I wouldn't worry about them making the playoffs. But that's not the goal for the Bengals and Joe Burrow. You give him that contract. You've been to the Super Bowl already. The goal for the Bengals is to win the Super Bowl. It's not to make the playoffs. And if you go 0-2, the path to the Super Bowl is all of a sudden much, much more difficult. Well, then you are guaranteed to not get the bye, basically. You're not going to go 0-2 and then be the 1 seed in the AFC. It is not going to happen. You're likely going to have to be on the road the whole time because you'd lose to the Ravens, who would be 2-0 in that division. You'd be 0-2, so you're essentially 2.5 or 3 games back for the division lead behind a good team. And the Ravens are a really, really good team. You know, I don't know that they're Super Bowl winning team, but they're going to be really, really tough. And they win a lot of games with Lamar Jackson. And if you go down 0-2, you probably aren't going to be the ones, you probably aren't going to win your division. So you're going to be on the road the whole playoffs likely. And when you're trying to win a Super Bowl, that is just a tough path. Now, Cincinnati has shown they can obviously go on the road and win a playoff game. They went and smoked the Bills last year in the playoffs. The year before that, they beat Kansas City in Arrowhead to go to the Super Bowl. But that's not it's like it's like this. If I can make a shot from half court, that doesn't mean that should be the shot I take every time. And Cincinnati Bengals, just because you can go and win road playoff games doesn't mean it's not going to be easier if you get some home playoff games sometime. Okay, when your goal is to win the Super Bowl, I think you want to have to travel less so your guys are a little more rested even in the following weeks in the playoffs. You know, it's all those things I think are hugely important. So, like I said, I don't worry about the Cincinnati Bengals missing the playoffs at all, even if they go 0-2. I'd have to see more than that. But their path to their final goal, which is to win the Super Bowl, I think becomes a lot harder all of a sudden. A lot harder, you know.
And that's where I agree. And I think that you're exactly, they're going to go to the playoff. Like, Cincinnati's a safe playoff team, but
Right.
you, especially with it, you can't afford division losses very well in the AFC. It is way less forgiving. In the NFC, it's like, okay, we get it. But the Super Bowl mindset becomes a lot harder in the AFC than it does in the NFC.
I agree.
So,
all right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This was our 3rd official episode. Just to let you a little bit behind the corner, this was a much more improvised show than some of our other ones. I had 0 notes. I have written down what segments we were doing. And you know, but I think that was good practice for me and Alex. I actually thought it went pretty well. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the week 2 of the NFL season, and we will see you all next week. Have a good one.